And one of the things we did is we leaned into graphic design. And we're like, okay, if the whole world is going to be living in boxes, we would at least want to have the most beautiful boxes there are. And we just leaned into that. And our first couple of productions, we probably look back on them and cringe a little bit. But at first we thought, this is kind of low rent, low bar. Like, I'm not sure if this is like a championship level Fox Sports production. We just stuck with it. And every single one of our productions looked a little better and a little better and a little better. Now you look at them and you can't even recognize what we did 9 months ago.
Leaning into live streams is the way to go, and it's what we're going to be doing with this show. If you missed it, we took the podcast live for the Storyteller Experience. 10 incredible storytellers who not only shared with us their stories, but also the stories they're telling. If you missed it, no need to worry. We're going to bring you each interview over the next several weeks. And then at the end of it all, breaking into a whole new season of Storyteller. It's going to be the same show, but have a new flow. If you're new here, my name is Sky Muller, sports anchor turned media support guru. I work with all the top dogs in the media space and help them tell their stories to the world. Joining me, as always, Christine Chalk, multi-Emmy winning producer turned VP and downright media genius. Christine, though, not the only VP on the show today as we break down pandemic pivots in producing from home with Michael Bucklin, Vice President of Fox Sports Digital. Busy 2021 for Buck and his team. College football playoff, NFL, NFC championship, Super Bowl 55, and most recently, the Daytona 500. And in that spirit, time to welcome Michael to the show and start the engines on Storyteller.
Sky, Christine, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Okay, we have to tell the viewers at home a quick funny story before we jump in here. We asked all of our storytellers, hey, share your best on-the-job photo with us. You probably saw some of them on the landing page that you're watching down below. And at the time, Michael said, hey, Christine, I really don't have a lot of great on-the-job photos. We thought it'd be a better way to see where these people work rather than a typical headshot. He said he didn't have a lot of great on-the-job photos. And then I think we've got the photo that he hit us up with. If you don't recognize the three guys he's standing next to, three all-time football greats. Casually, you've got Joe Montana, Brett Favre, Drew Brees. So, Buck, you've got to give us the story behind this not so great on-the-job photo.
Oh, man. People have been sending this to me all week. So the Super Bowl last year, the Super Bowl was on Fox down in Miami. And we decided to put a production together, a Super Bowl watch party, which is like a live interactive co-viewing experience while you're watching the Super Bowl on the big screen. We have an interactive experience that's on your phone or on your laptop. We decided to go big. We decided to get some Hall of Famers, Brett Favre and Joe Montana. And we got a current player in Drew Brees. And we had Joel Klatt, one of our analysts, host it. And you could basically watch the Super Bowl. And if you had a question for Joe Montana, you could ask him a question. You could ask Drew Brees a question. You could ask Brett Favre a question. And they basically answered fan questions and told stories about the Super Bowl for about 3 straight hours. And afterwards, I think most of us in this industry, it's kind of not cool to take a picture with the star. Every once in a while, you got to use your silver bullet, and that was one of them. So
you can't walk away from that.
Perfect time to use the silver bullet. Not at all.
Yeah.
Kristen and I are so in tune here that we both want to know your story. Tell us about your role at Fox Sports.
So, role at Fox Sports, I manage the digital content team. And that team is the group of people that put content on the Fox Sports app, the Fox Sports website, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Snapchat, anywhere you can get content, audio platforms, Spotify, Apple Pods, anywhere you can get content. We make content for those platforms. We have a really strong team that's producing live interactive videos like the watch party I told you about earlier. We have a team that's handling social media. We have a team that's handling all the written editorial that you see on our website and our app. We have a team of designers. We have a team of technical engineers. We have a team of people that support the broadcast that you see every day on FS1, and even a team that supports the talent. We have a roster of 250 talent here at Fox Sports. A lot of household names that we like to say are one of the best influencer networks in sports. People like A-Rod and Big Papi and Joe Buck and Troy Aikman and to our daytime studio shows like Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp and Nick Wright and Colin Coward. So we have a team that supports just about every single thing that this company does. And they work pretty much morning, noon, night, weekends, holidays, you name it.
What do they say? Sports never sleeps, right? You've mentioned a few times watch parties. I want to dive into this idea of watch party. Your team really capitalizes on these. And I think especially in this last year with an audience wanting to feel more connected. For those of you who haven't had a chance to tune into a watch party, we've got some video here, show you a little behind the scenes and what those look like. Michael, where'd the idea first come from to produce something like this?
Sure. We try to lean into our strengths here. And we think that one of the biggest strengths our company has is live events. We have the World Cups, men's and women's. We have the Super Bowl every 3 years. We have something like 40% of NFL viewership, the NFC Championship, which we just had this past Sunday. And we've always really good at covering live events that were on our air. And we thought, how do we put together a complimentary experience for those events? And how one that specifically is engineered for the digital fan. And so we ended up creating these watch parties and that were live during these events that were on our air. And it would eventually stretch to do watch parties for events that were not even on our air, just because that live element, being live in those live event windows, is so important to us. So if you're going to create an event that, a watch party, it's an alternative experience to what you see on air, you got to do it differently, right? You got to give people a choice. If they want to listen to two of the best announcers to do it, and they want to sit back and have a lean back experience, they have that. We have absolutely fantastic announcers. Competitors have fantastic announcers. We are not trying to supplement that. What we're trying to do is provide a differentiated experience for the fan that's looking for more of an interactive experience. And so when you watch our watch parties, you're going to notice, just like this broadcast, you can ask the talent, or we call them talent personalities. You can ask the personalities questions, and your tweet or your comment will end up on screen. The talent or the personalities will address it. They'll answer it for you. But these interactive experiences are just a different way to enjoy a game. We think they're the future. There's no reason there should even be one interactive watch party for a live event. I see a future where there's different themes, different styles for different types of users, different platforms. But we've started with Joel Klatt, our college football analyst, in a conference room with his researcher, and they watched a college football playoff. And we looked up and we go, wow, we got 3 million views. People watching a person watch a game. That's pretty interesting. Let's see if we can double down on this. And 2 years later, Joel Klatt is sitting in that room down in Miami with Joe Montana, Drew Brees, and Brett Favre. No offense to his researcher, but we upped our game a little bit. We hired new directors. We hired new graphic producers. We hired additional producers to produce every talent that you see in a box or see on set. And we just plan on continuing to iterate on top of this and make it better and better and better.
And one thing similar to what you just said, Michael, to what Elijah said, is still doing this stuff even if you don't own the rights, right? You guys did one for the college football national championship. It was on ESPN. It wasn't on your network yet. You have this second screen experience. It's interactive. You get to hear Joel Klatt, Reggie Bush, Joe Burrow break down this game in real time. I mean, there's no wonder it's got huge numbers, because you set access to those personalities. What's the key to pulling it off, though? Like, what goes into it? You mentioned you have, sounds like team on top of team on top of team. What if I didn't have a team? Like, how can you pull this kind of a thing off?
Sure. I mean, first of all, it takes really good booking, because we can be the best producers on the world, but if you don't like the person you're seeing on camera, it's not going to be that interesting, right? And we try to swing big. We try to swing big, like going after Joe and Brett and Drew. We just this past weekend, we had Michael Vick, Emmanuel Sanders, Greg Jennings. We brought in some big guests, like you said, for the college football edition. We brought in Joe Burrow. You try to bring in people that, there's timeline stoppers. You're scrolling. All of a sudden you see Joe Burrow live. That's pretty interesting. You're going to stop and check that out. From there, we got to put them in the best position to win. And there's a lot of different ways to do a watch party. You could do a watch party in which they are live, breaking down the game the whole time. But that's kind of what they do on TV, right? And so if you're going to give them some, the fan at home, a choice to do something different, you might want to watch a different style. And so we tell these people silence is okay. We want people to feel like they're in a living room with you, right? Joe Burrow, if he was watching the national title game, is not talking for 3 straight hours. He's taking breaks. He's eating chips. You often see our people eating. They got to go up and go to the bathroom. They can get up and go, right? It's a totally laid back experience And if you have a question for them, you lob that question in, which means we have to have a group of producers, probably similar to you have now, who are scanning the internet for people who are asking questions, either using the hashtag or responding to our tweets or responding to our posts. So that's what goes into it. And you're really trying to find a few just golden stories, right? You kind of you study your talent, you kind of see what people are asking online. You do a little pre-production and you're like, you know what, if this particular player on the field does something good, I know one of my talent has a story about that player. You try to really take that out of the talent. And that then, in addition to being an interesting live experience, becomes an incredible VOD that you share afterwards that can just grow viewership forever and serve fans in a more evergreen way.
It's those golden stories that really are the standout moments that are really hard to manufacture, but when you see them, you know you've struck gold on those.
Yeah, Christine, there was a moment.
Imagine. Oh yeah, go ahead.
There was a moment in the Super Bowl where we asked Joe Montana a question about getting nervous in a big game. And this was completely unprepared. And this is the type of thing I think you get when you don't have a scripted show. Joe says, you know, guys, how I used to settle my nerves is I figured out that the phone's on the bench. You can dial 9 to get out. So I would just call my wife on the sidelines. And the first time anyone had ever been told that story. And of course, it only came up because we were talking about how to settle your nerves in a Super Bowl. I think it's like that gold that you could have never planned for. You can only really create the environment for it. But if you plan the right way, sometimes you get lucky and those stories come out.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. Dial 9 to get out. So I imagine those watch parties, those were easier to produce when you could all be in one place. Obviously, the last year has thrown us a bit of a curveball. See, I promised my bad baseball buns weren't done. 2023 is a bit of a curveball here with figuring out how to do it from home, how to produce from a bunch of different homes at once, living rooms, garages. Speaking of, we've got some behind the scenes photos because you guys have pulled off some crazy, crazy setups. What went into this? How did you make production? Production for you guys didn't stop just because of the pandemic.
Yeah, we certainly didn't wake up one day and figure out how to do it. We were very lucky. That for years, innovation is sort of core to who Fox Sports is. And I know everyone says that, and it sounds a little cliche, but Fox Sports is the company that put the yellow line on the football field. And this is crazy, but they're the first company to put the score bug on a football game. They called it the Fox box. They made the hockey puck glow, and more recently, I think we went fairly viral for the Mega Cam. I don't know the technology behind it, but essentially the live portrait shot on the sideline of football games. And that really runs, in the family, so to speak. Like there's a real pride in being innovative and trying things and not being afraid to fail. And that whole not being afraid to fail thing is really hard to teach, right? But we would take these productions on the road. We didn't know if the Wi-Fi was going to hold up. We didn't know what the power was going to look like. We didn't know if the production equipment was going to overheat, but we just kind of committed to it. And we were so fortunate to get the clearance from our bosses and the budget from our bosses to go shoot live shows at places like South by Southwest in Austin. And we'd be shooting out of the back of a bar, and the closet is basically the control room. And, Elijah was talking about, bubble gum and popsicle sticks holding together a production. He was part of a lot of those productions. So that's where we learned it, right? But we had this incredibly strong team led by Mike Jankolovitz, our senior director of video operations, who has a real strong team of Ricardo and Daniela and Thomas Meeson and some great graphics producers. We have some great, we call them tagboard producers, guys. We kind of use you as a descriptor, and Conrad Company and Danny Green. And these people just got used to producing these live interactive broadcasts from the weirdest places. Like I said, in the back of a bar in Austin, in Red Square in Moscow for the World Cup, from the Trocadero in Paris overlooking the Eiffel Tower at the Women's World Cup, from the grandstands at the Daytona 500 to, the bleachers from the World Series. And when you learn to produce live content and sort of get comfortable in that uncomfortable in these wild, unpredictable environments where there might be rain, unsure of the connection you're going to have. And all of a sudden the pandemic hits, there's a Hunter Thompson quote, right? When the going gets weird, the weird turn pro. Well, the world got really weird and we just turned pro. And we called it the garage band because instead of being in studio, we started producing out of the garages and the apartments that you just showed in that video. Rick's Garage is, now going to be in the Fox Sports Hall of Fame because we produce 900 hours of television content, to help out our TV team out of Ricardo's garage and Danny's apartment in Santa Monica. And it was those practice reps of the years that I think allowed that team to just kick into action and really bring a broadcast to the big screen.
It's really cool to hear how the challenges aren't too different the last 12 months than they were before when you're building a set in a foreign country, or you're going, like you said, you can't predict the weather or anything like that. Or today, half of the East Coast feels like they don't have internet. So like there's all these different things that you go through. What were the challenges then in the last 12 months? Were there the different challenges that your team had to overcome, and how'd you work through those?
Well, the first thing is keeping people safe, right? And so how do you put people in a safe environment that still allows them to successfully do their job? And so there was a lot of learning, not just how to do a remote production, but how to do it, perhaps isolate it, right? Because even those remote productions, we'd all be in one place at the same time. In this case, you got your director is in his garage. You got your associate director is in her apartment. You got your, Janko, our senior director, in his apartment in a different city. You got talent in 5 cities across America. You just kind of accept that you're not going to know what to do right away, and you just kind of commit to it. There's a lot of times where talent, don't know how to position their camera, and you got to get on before, and you got to teach them how to shape a shot. You got to work with them to get lighting. You got to kind of accept that the Wi-Fi is going to go out sometimes, or that someone is going to freeze, and you got to prepare your talent for those moments. And you got to prepare your staff that, hey, this won't be perfect, but we're going to keep progressing. And I thought the team just did an absolutely incredible job. I mean, I think that the way the team tackled those obstacles during the pandemic is something I would presume none of them will ever forget and will forever be proud of.
We've got people tuning in from all across industries, and everyone from being a part of really, really big networks to, universities who are working to produce live streams, to sports teams, to media who's transitioning off of traditional linear into a live stream. What would you say are the things, having done it all, what are the things not to do? If you could go back and just tell someone, hey, save yourself some time. Don't do this. We did it. It doesn't work. What's your best don't do this advice?
Well, first of all, you can easily come up with 45 reasons that these productions are bad ideas, right? Because no one wants to go dead while on the air. And that happened a few times, that did with some of the biggest talent on live television moments. And for the people who are involved in those moments, they feel horrifying in the moment. You get over it, right? You get 900 hours in, and that mess up in hour 10 is long in the past. That's the first thing, because if you focus on the reasons not to do it, you can find a million of them. But if you kind of commit to the process, you're like, you know what, this webcam that's on my laptop right now doesn't look that good, but we're finding better cameras, all right? Or doing this with an athlete who said he'd do this interview, but his connection's terrible and he's actually driving his car. Just be prepared to leave that on the cutting room floor, or find technology that can take a low connection screen capture and figure out a way to piece it together on the back end, which is something that we did. But we really just tried to ignore all the reasons not to do this stuff and really just try to focus on the long view of, like, if we stick to this and we keep doing it, it's going to get better. We also knew that, when you have a big, beautiful set or the Fox lot, which we have, the Elijah reference, this historic Fox lot, you're so used to these just beautiful sets with these huge LED HD monitor walls, all the bells and whistles you could ever want, connectivity to every feed you could ever want. And that goes away. And you kind of become equal with anyone in the world who can do a Zoom production. And so then you just try to lean into what your differences can be. And one of the things we did is we leaned into graphic design. And we're like, okay, if the whole world is going to be living in boxes, we would at least want to have the most beautiful boxes there are. And we just leaned into that. And our first couple of productions, we probably look back on them and cringe a little bit. But at first we thought, this is kind of low rent, low bar. Like, I'm not sure if this is like a championship level Fox Sports production. We just stuck with it. And every single one of our productions looked a little better and a little better and a little better. And now you look at them and you can't even recognize what we did 9 months ago.
They're clean, no question. Yeah, Fox Bet, you have the social, you have live stat, you have everything in there, and it's a really all inclusive viewing experience. It's really cool to watch it all come together. As we look ahead now, Michael, to I know you mentioned Elijah's the guy that can see the future, but I know from talking with you and seeing what your team does, you have your eye on these trends as well. 2020 probably changed some of that roadmap to what we're looking at too. What do you see? What's your eye on in the future? Where are we headed with storytelling?
Sure. 2020 definitely fast tracked a lot of the future that we saw coming, 2, 3, 4 years away. Also was here, right? I was like, it's here, whether you're ready for it or not. So I think we're all going to get better at these remote productions. That's one. I don't think we've even, really seen what a truly great remote production is. I have a feeling there were incredible entrepreneurs out there who, the second that they realized this is going to be a thing, they were like, okay, I got an idea. And those ideas are going to be hitting any day now, I can't tell you what that's going to look like. But one of the things that I'm really excited about, and, it's like Elijah and I paid each other, to be this complimentary. Normally we just rag each other constantly. But I think community is maybe a corny cliche term. But that's the future. And I look at the community that Crooked built, and it's real. And if Tommy and John and gang, decided that they were going to go do something else, I bet you that community would follow them, because that's how real that community is. I think that those communities tend to happen around people more so than brands. People like people more than brands. And I think we need to find more people that have these communities. And an example recently that I'd love to highlight is we hired a new college football analyst named RJ Young. RJ Young has never worked for a major media company before. RJ Young had 60,000 YouTube subscribers that would listen to him blog or vlog every single day. And when he announced that he was coming to Fox Sports, he didn't say, I just signed with Fox Sports. He said, we now work for Fox Sports. And he really meant it. He meant his community was now with Fox Sports. And when we were doing one of the watch parties that you showed earlier, the MLB World Series watch party, the host of that we had a few. We had Rick Ankiel, we had Nick Swisher, but we also had a young man named Ben Verlander. And Ben Verlander is the number one MLB The Show player on Twitch. And when we asked him how he wanted to announce he was coming to Fox Sports, most people say, I want to tweet or on a press release. He's like, I want to tell my community that I'm going. And he went into his Twitch stream that night and he told his community, like, I'm going to do this thing with Fox Sports. And these people were just so happy for him. And he said, but an important part of this is you're all coming with me. And we were mind blown when we started that watch party. And we saw about 2,000 more people in that YouTube comment section than we've ever seen before. And they were just celebrating that they had made it to this new place. And they supported him like you never seen before. You see the advent of Facebook groups and these other communities that are popping up. But community feels extremely important as we move forward.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think I'll echo everyone at Tagboard who couldn't agree with you more. This idea of community, how simple to switch the word from I to we, and what a big difference that makes for viewers at home. Yeah. We ask all of the storytellers who join Storyteller the same question, and that's in 3 words. The best stories are blank, blank, and blank.
I think emotional. I think that Tom Rinaldi yesterday told a story about Aaron Jones, Packers running back, and the connection he had with Ethan, a local fan, and we actually, we're so happy to have Tom Rinaldi on our team because he's like the man who has the voice that makes people cry, and he just, no one better to tell a story that is a tough story to tell than Tom Rinaldi. He's the best at it, and we're so happy to have him. And then on the flip side, an emotional story could also make you laugh, and we have someone like Charlotte Wilder, who we just hired. She's one of our multimedia personalities who, one of the things she's best known for is experiencing a WWE WrestleMania for the first time without having any idea what she was walking into. I mean, just imagine that. And I think having that range to tell stories that elicit emotion is really important. I think that evergreen stories are important. Stories that are good today and they're good in 10 years those are some of the best stories. It's how stories travel through time. And of course, memorable stories, I would make my third. if a story sticks with you, you remember it later, it's probably a good story.
A ton of memorable moments from Michael Bucklin, officially a recurring guest here on Storyteller. Make sure you hit him up on Twitter @TheBuckStuff. Let him know you enjoyed his insight, and of course, keep an eye on those Fox Sports digital channels for the amazing watch parties. And then catch us next week for quotes like this.
We went into this thinking, if we can get 500 people to click on this, we're going to be happy. Yeah, like 20 minutes later, we nearly took the website down. We had 19,000 clicks in just a course of a few hours. It blew us away.
Wowza, how about that? Success of QR codes and so much more with Karen Horn, Vice President of Research and Growth at Altice. Catch you next week right here on Storyteller.